Okay, welcome this evening to our webinar, Online Business Tune-Up. And tonight's presentation is being presented by Larry Bruck and Bob DeFore, and sponsored by SCORE North Cook and Lake County Chapter. I'm Al Blitz, a SCORE mentor, and I'll be serving as this evening's moderator. Please submit your questions at any time during the webinar. You can use the chat function. We really do welcome all of your questions, and we'll address your questions at the end of the presentation. And that should take about 50 minutes. Just a few words about SCORE North Cook and Lake County's chapter. Many of you may be aware we are a non-for-profit partner of the Small Business Administration. We offer free and confidential mentoring at nearly 40 mentoring sites. And now in the pandemic environment, we're using virtual platforms, email mentoring, and occasionally even telephone. One quick housekeeping note: when our program ends, please stay connected and you will be prompted to access the evaluation form that's going to appear on your screen. We really do appreciate and welcome your feedback. It also gives you the opportunity to request a mentor, and a mentor will contact you when you click that box. And then I will email all attendees a copy of this evening's presentation as a PDF in a follow-up email. Okay, so we'll get the presentation going. I'm going to turn it over to Bob to get us started, and I'll join you at the Q&A session.
Great. Thank you, Alan. I'm Bob, and below me on the camera is Larry, and his picture is there. Both of us have spent most of our careers, all of our careers, in marketing functions, and you can see some of the companies with the logo brands up there that we've worked for. So, so this is, kind of digital marketing is very near and dear to both of us. So, in this 1 hour, this will take about 45 minutes plus or minus, and that'll leave us time for Q&A at the end. But we're going to talk strategically for just a little bit, but most of the time very practically about a situation that is very relevant to today, a situation where you find that the physical presence of your business has been compromised in some way. And I'd encourage you to think a little bit more broadly. And yes, we're talking about digital in the age of pandemic and COVID-19 and things like that, but think about it as a situation where a physical presence is compromised in some way. And that could be things like tornadoes or floods or fires, or just something as simple as you have to move locations or you have to close down for a holiday party. So all of these things, are situations where you can have some business continuity, business sustainability by having a digital presence. And so like I said, just think a little bit more broadly about what we're going to be presenting today, and not just as a reaction to what's going on with the pandemic. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about what's going on with consumers very briefly. We're going to hit on the importance of a digital growth strategy within the context of what's going on with consumers. But then we're going to spend the majority of the time on discussing a three-phased online business tune-up approach about how do I get customers to my site. Once they're there, how do I move them through the funnel to get them to the end to pull out a payment vehicle? And how do I keep that improving time after time? So those are the topics that we're going to cover. Like Alan said, we'll send you a PDF of these slides. So just sit back, kind of listen to what we're presenting. Please post your questions. But just think about how this could affect your business and the important tidbits of things that you can use tomorrow when you go into your shop. So on the next slide, we want to hit these four kind of macro trends. And the interesting thing about the pandemic is that it's really forced a lot of consumers who would otherwise be pretty reluctant to explore new ways of doing business. And because of the duration of this, 2 months, 3 months, plus, it's become kind of habit forming, and it's really reshaped the way that consumers are conducting business. And I think it's going to change that for a long time in the future. And so these are the four topics, and it's not a comprehensive list, but they're four trends that we think are impacting the topic of today, which is this online business tune-up. And we're going to touch on each of those just a little bit, but very quickly. So the first one is that e-commerce today is commerce. I've been reading an article about someone who was looking at what's happened to e-commerce adoption rate, digital adoption rate, whether that's mobile or laptop or desktop, whatever. And they said, what they had looked for in one particular example was they were looking at the online sale of groceries, and like everything else, they had a growth chart planned out for 5-10 years in the future. And pandemic has really kind of functioned to accelerate all that stuff by upwards of 5 years, the adoption rate. So the growth rates that we're seeing of online commerce is something that has just been mind-boggling, but it's something that has accelerated, and I don't think it's gonna drop back. And what I would encourage you to do is, think about the things that you do today that you're regularly using, that maybe you didn't do before, but that you'll continue to use just because you've tried them, they're comfortable, you feel that there's safety and security around this stuff, maybe there's better hygiene, whatever it is. But, think about those things like online shopping, home delivery, curbside takeout, touchless payments, all of those things, remote working, all of those things that you didn't do before that you're doing now, and how many of those have changed your life in a better way, and how many of those you'll retain. And so that's the thing here, is that adoption rate has really accelerated. We think that's going to stick, and so therefore there's a need to adopt a digital strategy, but there's also a real business imperative to have that as part of your omni-channel strategy. And I would point to one thing is that in April, the U.S. Census Bureau, they took a look at all the different categories of consumer spending by sales category, and all the categories were down by a minimum of 12% to upwards of 70% year over year. Huge declines, except for one thing. And that one thing was in the non-store, non-physical presence, so think e-commerce, and that group was up by 8%. So, a lot of the companies that you're seeing on this list have spent a lot of money acquiring companies, building capabilities and things like that, and it has gotten them into a very good place when it comes to digital business. But what's going on with consumers really pairs well with this digital commerce section. The second one is we're here. Zoom is just this phenomenon. It's gone from 10 million to over 300 million. Think about that kind of growth rate in a period of 3 months. And whether it's for social or professional, but all of this stuff has this broad adoption of this engagement has brought the user behavior to the mainstream. And it's creating a lot of different avenues that you can connect with your customers, friends and family as well. But we're talking really from a business standpoint here. So this remote engagement is point number 2. Point number 3 is something that's kind of tried and true. It's been around for a long time, and that's customer centricity. And at the very top it says what's old is new again, and more important than ever. Customer centricity, it's always been important. It's always been at the heart of a very successful business enterprise. But, ironically, if you look back over the last 12 months, 24 months, something like that, and look at your own experience, maybe you didn't spend as much because business demand was so high. And sometimes when business demand is so high, you kind of take customers for granted. Maybe some of this stuff gets pushed to the back. But always, as far as these 4 areas, yes, there are a lot of things going on with virtual engagement. Yes, there are a lot of things going on with digital commerce, but don't forget that all of this stuff really starts with serving a particular customer, your target customer, and Larry's going to touch a little bit more on that. So keep the customer at the center, because that's not new, but that never goes away. And the fourth one that we've got is customer welfare. So this kind of heightened focus on clean conditions and things like that. We don't believe this is going to be a blip. A lot of the consumer research that has come out in the last quarter or so, they're talking about what are values that they want to see out of companies. Trust is always there. Helpfulness is always there, but this one has just popped up, and again, don't believe that it's going to go away. Most people think that it's going to stay, and so this is another one that it's going to be a value that you need to kind of grasp, and you need to be able to prove this to your consumers that you're taking care of them from a hygienic standpoint. So just 4 things, like we said, it's just not a comprehensive list, but it's a list that will help inform some of the things that Larry's going to talk about in just a few moments. So what we want to do is just kind of move to, okay, how do you take that stuff and how do you put it together with what does that mean for your business? So these 4 things, customer centricity, e-commerce, virtual engagement, customer welfare, these are the factors that are driving the winners of today. And the strategy is important, I would say. Strategy is important because it tells you what to do, but it just as importantly, it tells you what not to do. And there are so many things, everyone's kind of grasping at, what do I do with this? And everything may look really good. So having that strategy can be intimidating, but it's really important because it keeps you focused. And if you don't keep focused, you're gonna flounder a little bit here. And one of the things that we found when we were preparing this was that McKinsey did some research, and back in 2008, 2009, they looked at the companies that emerged from that and were very resilient during that. And they had this growth mindset where they kind of aggressively looked to and planned for future growth opportunities. So again, having this strategy, keeping it very simple, but also understanding that it keeps your mind and your investments focused, and it keeps other things out of the way and the distractions out of the way. And we have a very, kind of simple way of looking at this, just with 3 components, is understanding where you are today, on some of those metrics about how you're delivering to your customers and things like that. So you're kind of as is state. And how does that compare with where you want to be? And Larry is going to go into a whole lot of things that will kind of give you some very good ideas about where you want to be when it comes to digital commerce. And then finally, it's how do I close that gap? How do I get from where I am today to where I want to be? And again, Larry's going to show you, a lot of the techniques that you can use to close this gap. So I'm going to turn it over to Larry now, but I'd leave you with one thing, and that is Walmart just came out with their quarterly results, and their e-commerce sales were up significantly. I think it was 74-75%. And somewhere in the context of what they were talking about, one of the things they said was it was very important for them to be able to leverage this digital presence along with having that local presence. And so a lot of times you look at big digital players, whether that's Amazon or others, and go, how do I compete against that? Well, you can't, but what you can do is you can compete on a different plane. And if you say it's important to have this digital presence, and that's what we're going to talk about here, but I have this local presence, and this local presence is good for one of peace of mind, of being able to see products, of being able to return them, being able to get advice. So don't look at this as this is really a bridge too far for me. You can get very good in digital, but you can use that in conjunction with your local presence and have a very, very strong proposition for your purchasers. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Larry, who's going to give you some very practical advice after all that strategy talk.
Thank you, Bob. Well, welcome everybody, and appreciate your time tonight. One of the reasons we call this an online business tune-up is that we're covering a lot of different topics here tonight. And it's going to be we're going to rip right through it and think about it in the terms of, like, if you went into brought your car in, and your mechanic, they have a list of different things, and they come back to you and they kind of say, hey, we checked all 20 of these things, and here's these 2 areas you might want to look at. And that's kind of the thought here tonight. We're going to cover 12 different areas, and I realize that most of them probably will not be resonating, but if there's 1 or 2 that can be a tipping point positively for your business, that would be terrific. And in the way that we're going to be going through these are going to be at a high level, And if you need to, we can follow up later on any of these different topics and drill down. So here is the structure that we're going after. And when you think about the online world, being discoverable is really critical. And the discoverable, the way you can look at this is the context of the pre-purchase. And the desirable is the purchase phase, and the continual improvement is the post-purchase phase. But in the online world, if you cannot be found, you cannot be purchased. So this notion of being discoverable, being there and intersecting people on their path to purchase in the right context is very effective. And I'll talk about a number of things you can do to accomplish that. Then when we go into the desirable area, here it's really a question about the user experience you're delivering through your site. And are you making it easy for people to buy? Online shoppers, they're on a mission. And what our job is to make sure that we, first of all, understand what their mission is, and we can facilitate that so they can quickly get to the solution they're looking for. And making your site easy to navigate and easy to buy is really critical in that. And then the final area, this continual improvement, this is one that's often overlooked. And it's actually a great opportunity to think about and set up your next purchases. And capturing the right consumer metrics and finding insights within this that are going to help you improve your business is really the game there that you want to be playing online. So as we look at these three areas, we're going to drill down and hit on four areas within each. So there's target understanding, your online storefront. We'll talk briefly about keywords and paid search and email marketing. And that is, again, this discoverable areas, make yourself easy to find. And then in the purchase phase, looking at site traffic and user experience on your site, easy to buy navigation, the use and application of ratings and reviews, and then thinking about extending the channels that might be available for people to buy you, rather than just having the physical presence, having that online or pickup or other things to sell your product there. And then the final phase here, we're going to look at Google Analytics, a different take on ratings and reviews, from using that as a really a repository to find added insights and improvement on your business, and then competitive benchmarking, and then mobile readiness, of course. So here we go into this first phase. And I want to point out in every one of these, we're going to hit you with a key question. And then at the very bottom of the page, why is that question important? And then in the middle, really talk about a little bit of perspective on the individual area. So this first one of target understanding, this is an area that I think all too often people run through it too quickly. And it's actually, I think, one of the most important areas in terms of driving the effectiveness of your business. The key question is, who are these people? Who are your most valuable customers? What are their unmet needs or desired benefits? What are they looking to achieve? And then how is your offering meeting these needs? And how are you meeting those solutions? And so oftentimes when people look at their targets, they really just look at this first area of a profile. And it's a fairly general profile, and hey, here's who's coming through the door and things along those lines. But we'd encourage you to dig down a little bit deeper beyond demographics and think about, as I mentioned before, what is it they're trying to achieve? What are the problems that they're trying to correct, and along those types of lines? The next area is these unmet needs. So what are the benefits they're looking for, the solutions, and their purchase drivers? And what we mean by purchase drivers, what are the triggers that really move people into the marketplace? It could be, you know, a furnace goes out, for example, or a toothache occurs or something like that. But it could also be something where it's a scheduled purchase path. It might be groceries, for example, and Thursday night people tend to put together their shopping lists for the weekend. So being present at those kind of times is a real advantage. The next area here is think about the purchase journey and the behaviors, you know, the pre, the purchase, and the post. What is it that they're doing, and how do you take advantage of that? And then finally, what is your right to win? And that is really the simple way to think about this is what is it that's going to distinguish you from the competition, that's going to set you apart and make you the choice from the consumer's perspective. So why is all this important? Well, the more that you understand your customer, the more that you can speak to them in a way that's really going to resonate and one that's going to help you kind of move above the crowd. And in an online world, that's critically important. And then also the other factor here is that the better you are at this, the more effective your marketing efforts can be in terms of return on investment. So the next one here is your online store. And what we're not talking about here is your website. What we're really talking about are these social platforms that people use and they're used very, very heavily to go to find information, to get perspective, and then to find and create oftentimes a short list of people that they're going to shop. And you know, it's the Googles, the Facebooks, the Yelps, and all out there. These are very, very effective, and understanding which of those work the best for your business is really an important discovery that I encourage you to look into. Depending on your business, you may not need all of these, and oftentimes what we've seen is that one or two of these channels are very effective, and then once you know that, you can double down in those areas and really capitalize on that flow of traffic to your site. What you're seeing on the right-hand side here is an example of an online search. So you have the Google page, and these online storefronts, they pop up here. I'm sure you've seen them, but what makes them very effective is that they very oftentimes will be present right at the time that people are doing that search. And that is really kind of key, because you want to be, what they often do is they are geographically located. So if somebody is in Arlington Heights and they're looking for a mechanic, boom, you know, it's going to pop up right there. So it's a very, very effective thing. And again, think about this as a channel of tapping customers and bringing them into your world. So why is it important? That obvious point, if you can't be found, you won't be purchased. This is a great way to be found. And then as Bob was talking about earlier, 85% of transactions still happen locally. And registering and having these storefronts is a way to have that local near me presence. So it's that presence of, you know, perhaps you have your physical store and you also have the complementary online store to work hand in hand with your customers. The next step is keywords. You may or may not have heard of, you know, keywords. I just want to really briefly kind of talk about what they are. And I think the best way to think about them is in the world of online search, there is basic algorithms that are used. And what they do is somebody puts in a search. They, you know, have words and suggestions and things like that. And then what happens, and why the keywords are so important, is they work as a code, and these little spiders actually go out into the internet and they find those keywords, and they then bring them back and they present the search findings. And that, you can see that here in terms of the URLs, the pages, and things like that. And what we're talking about here on this page is organic search. So this is not a paid marketing thing, but what it is as you are describing your business, whether it be the name of your business, your services, how you do that, you're using a language, and that language has keywords within it. And an example I might give, I live in Arlington Heights, and let's just say I have a home security business. And if I am building my website, I want to use certain words that people might be using as they're doing their search. So home security, protection, safety, things like that. Perhaps even geographic, the area and all, so that when somebody's out there doing that search, I'm there, and the likelihood of being pulled forward and found in the internet is greater. And that's why these keywords are really, really important. And it's one of those things you always want to be going back and refining and mining and improving the keywords you use. So the keywords, they're really important to make it, make yourself found. And the other thing I'd point out is oftentimes when you do a search on Google, halfway down towards the bottom of the page, there's that thing of people also ask, and it shows these other questions. That's a really, really good resource to go in and to find other words that you might want to include within your keywords as you're describing your business. Now, the other thing I want to point out here is I mentioned just a moment ago how important your target understanding is. Well, as you're thinking about your keywords, think about your target and the language they would be using, the needs they're trying to meet, the purchase drivers, those types of things. This too, as you are getting smarter and smarter and deeper understanding in your target audience, it tends to bring forward really valuable keywords to add into your mix. So now I'm going to move on to paid search and also briefly email marketing. Paid search is different in that, one, it's a marketing vehicle and it's paid for. But when you think about when you've done a search before, and again, I'll use that analogy of home security, and I'm punching in and I'm looking for a home security system, and up comes these 3 different companies, and wow, they just happen to be right down the street from me. Well, that's the paid search. And the way that it works is you go in and you bid against certain words and against certain categories of business, and you can put parameters around it in terms of your budget and things like that. But when somebody is doing their search, you're found in their path to purchase. So you rise right to the top, and it makes you, a contextual sale. And so this key question of up at the top here is how effectively you're reaching the right audience and in the right context with the right message. While you think about paid search, you can be very, very effective and contextualize and be there at the right time when they're in their shopping mode. So how does this work? Well, paid search and AdWords is now referred to as Google Ads. And it's an online, really, really simple tool that Google has. And basically you pull it up and you go in there and they ask you, what's your business challenge? What are you trying to achieve? They then ask you about your audience, and basically that is the keywords. So you select a number of words and you put them in, and then you set budget parameters around it. And you might want to cap it from $1 perspective, or just have your ads running. If you know your purchase, people are shopping heavily right before the weekend, maybe you just want to be there Thursday and Friday and Saturday, you can do that kind of stuff and narrow it right in there. So you're really hitting your customers at the right time when they're in shopping mode. Now, briefly, email marketing. Email marketing is one of those areas that I don't think it gets the credit that it's due, and it's kind of looked at as like the ugly little stepchild of marketing in the online world, but it continues to perform. And the reason it's so effective is that you have, you're cultivating a list of individuals that you tend to know are interested in your offering. They also may be geographically located, and you can build a relationship with them. Email marketing is also very good for setting up not just the initial purchase, but follow-on purchases. So if you're in a business category where people shop that category a couple times a year, it's a very effective tool for that, because once you can almost give them reminders, come on back in, or things like that. And so you can really narrow yourself down in the competitive set, and it's proven to be a very effective tool. So why is all this important? Well, 75% of online users tend not to scroll through that first page. We all do this, and when you can find what you're looking for right there in that first page, why go further? So paid search allows you to be present at that first page. If you're in a B2B business, it's a very effective tool in terms of search engine optimization and generating leads. Email marketing, the ongoing rate right now is return on investment of 145%, which is really, really good, strong number there. So this discoverable phase. As I mentioned a few times here, if you can't be found, you won't be purchased. So the first step is to ensure that you can be easily found, importantly, by the right customers. And importantly and ideally, in the right context when they're in that shopping mode. You want to be intersecting their search and their shopping mission. So we're going to move on to the second phase here of desirable. This is, again, closer into the purchase phase. And the first item here is about site traffic and the user experience. There's a couple points here and questions. Are you funneling the right customers to your site and from where? And then the second one, does your site meet or exceed the expectations from the searches in your storefront? And what is not uncommon is where online marketers might be drawing traffic to a site, but once they get to that site, they fall out, and there's the term of bounce, the bounce rate, and that's a pretty bad problem when you're attracting the wrong customer to a site, or it might be the right customer, but your site then doesn't live up to the expectations that have been set. And so that's what we're really talking about on this page is finding that right customer and understanding where they're coming from, because then you can be much more focused in and harness those vehicles for business growth. And there's a number of different places you can look at. And in a little bit, we're going to talk about Google Analytics, and it's a great resource that can provide you insights and metrics along these things. But there's the direct, if somebody punching in your URL, there's organic search, which we just talked about. There's those online storefronts, the Facebook and Instagram and others. Those are huge, huge traffic builders, referrals, and possibly paid search or email marketing. So leveraging these and setting the right expectations and finding the right customer is really the key thing. And then once they come to your site, you really want to understand, what are they doing there? And is your site meeting and exceeding their needs, hopefully, so that you're moving them along their purchase journey. And the things you want to be looking at is, what pages are they looking at? Which unique sessions do they have? And then the average time they're spending on certain pages, because this shows a level of interest. And you're probably, if you have a pretty good level there, you're doing a good job. But if they just skip right through it, it might be an indicator that maybe that page isn't working hard enough for you. And there's some corrections you might want to get after. And then again, the bounce rate. If they're coming in and they're jumping out, or they're coming in and they click through a few pages and then they bounce before they get into a transactional mode. Maybe you have a tripwire there where you're kind of turning people off. So understanding these types of things and getting good metrics around it is just a fabulous way of driving the performance of your site. So this notion of delivering a really strong user experience is, anybody who's following online marketing, it's a very, very common and often a high level topic that's talked about a lot. And the reason is because when you do it well, your business performs better. The KPIs in your business are really strong. And then when you underdeliver and you provide a bad experience, we've all had that, and it can be a negative. It could be a turnoff, perhaps might even be a negative view in terms of your company overall. So you certainly want to avoid that. And then, as I mentioned, attracting the wrong customers can be a real waste of time and effort. And so linking these two things of reaching the right audience, knowing where they're coming from, and then meeting their expectations once they get to the site is really the magic balance we want to get to. So the next thing is make the site easy to buy and easy to buy navigation. And the headline point here is that depending on the nature of your business and what you're selling, your shopper and customer will have sometimes a very different purchase path or purchase mission that they're on. And so you want to understand what is it they're trying to achieve and make sure that your site is set up for easy navigation through to that point of the transaction. So I'll give you 3 examples here. And the first is products, it could be, apparel. So somebody comes in, they're shopping you online. They've got to go through, they find the items, they select that. You want to be able to easily put it into a cart, allow them to continue shopping or go to the checkout, and then the whole transaction around credit cards and all. If you're a restaurant, the behavior is a little bit different. Perhaps ratings and reviews, the first thing they've heard of you or word of mouth from a friend. So they come and they're checking, where are you located? They can look at your menu. Maybe this is the point where they're looking at reviews as well, kind of seeing how other customers are viewing you. And then going to a reservation, reserving that time and getting a confirmation of that. And then if perhaps you're a local mechanic, they're checking your services. They want to come in and they want to get some kind of deal on you. So maybe you're capturing some kind of profile information on them, and in return, you're giving them a coupon or incentive to come in and shop you. So 3 different businesses, 3 different navigation paths. So understanding, again, starting with that first point of the target understanding and what is their shopping mission with you, and making sure your page view navigation is set up to accomplish that in a way that's easy to buy is the simple trick you want to get to. So why is this important? Page flow optimization is really critical to that purchase journey. And when you get it right, your sales and performance tends to go up. And through all this, you can also identify, even when you have the right page flow, you can identify if people are abandoning you. Maybe, like I said on the previous page here, maybe you can see and get some understanding of, perhaps my menu review is not doing what it needs to do. It needs to work harder for us. And you can go and you can take some corrective action. So next up is ratings and reviews. We're all very familiar with these. And this is just a great tool, and one that I would strongly encourage you to take advantage of. The reason here is it works on a couple different levels. And I started my career in the advertising business a long time ago. If you were running TV advertising on a network, you were viewed as a very trusted brand. And nowadays, TV advertising, period, is not even on the top 3 list. But number 3 on this list is consumer opinions posted online. So that is your reviews. So this is ratings and review, a very strong vehicle in terms of building trust. And it is also a strong vehicle in terms of purchase influence. People shop them, they study them, they look at them, they try to understand them, and it influences what they buy and also what they reject. And then the other thing is that the volume of reviews also is correlated to sales lift. There's a couple of studies out there that just going from 0 to 1 review has a positive impact. But really what you want to be doing is constantly nurturing those reviews and increasing it from 50 to 100 to a couple hundred. And it's important to think about them as you've got to keep them relevant and current. So it's really good to go into them and continue to cultivate them and make sure, one, you're responding to any complaints, things like that, but also you're bringing fresh reviews in constantly. And then something I want to point out here is this point around authenticity. And it's very important. And surprisingly, at least I found this surprising, reviews in the areas of 4.2 to 4.5 outperform those 5.0 reviews. So we've all kind of gone to a site and there's 50 reviews and they're all 5.0. And you kind of smell something, maybe I got a marketing firm put this together for me and all that. And so the authenticity of those seems a little fake. So sometimes it can be too good to believe, quite frankly. And so being in the, having a couple of 5s and 4s is not a bad thing. And then the quantity matters, as I mentioned. There's a clear relationship between the volume and the relevance of those. and your business lift. So the next area is around your purchase options here. And this is really about omni-channel and going from beyond just a physical storefront to your online, and understanding which online channels might be best for you, and how many of those perhaps as well. And the key questions here is you really want, on the first level, is to protect your downside. So if your competition is out there and they're offering things like curbside pickup and you're not, that might be a meaningful disadvantage. But there's also a way of looking at this and understanding, how might I one-up my competition and expand the purchase options here. And again, this goes back to that target understanding, and understanding how your shoppers want to shop you, and then making sure your business is set up in a way to facilitate the way that they would prefer to shop you. What all of this is referred to as omni-channel, so it's more than just one channel, so it's in-store and online. And not surprising, with changing buying behavior, there's a pretty clear sales lift for companies that are more omni-channel and have a deeper understanding of how their shoppers prefer to shop them. And in some cases, it's understanding just a certain segment of the market that might want to buy a certain way, and then making sure you can facilitate that. And then the last point here is this notion of digital influence. About 4 years ago, this number was under 50%. It's now 77%. And this too gets at changing shopping behavior. And nowadays, oftentimes people will go online, they'll look at stores, they'll figure out what products they want. They might do, competitive pricing, and then they pick out retailers that they're going to go shop. And then sometimes then they go into the physical store and they make that purchase. There's other people who will go online and they'll, and buy right there. Both of those are considered digitally influenced transactions. So when you think about omni-channel, it is not just purely people that are going to buy you online. Oftentimes, by having an omni-channel presence, also helps to influence positively your physical store sales as well. So it's a good thing to keep in mind. So why is this important? Well, following consumer changing buying behavior is, it's probably never been more important. As Bob mentioned, changing online behavior is accelerated dramatically through this pandemic we're in, and it's going to be here for a long time. And then here too, protecting customer erosion, but also finding new avenues to expand your customer base is key here. All right, so that wraps up this point of the desirable. And the key questions are you converting shoppers into buyers? So that's really about this, not just being found, but once they come to your site, are you easy to buy and easy to navigate? And then do you deliver a positive user experience, making you easy to buy? So we're now going to go on to the third phase. And this is, again, to think about this is that post-purchase phase. And how do you gather further understanding that sets up future purchases? So I mentioned briefly Google Analytics. This is a terrific tool. It's also a free tool. And what it does is it gives you a lot of really good metrics about your website. And so those points about who's coming, where are they coming from, what are they doing once they get to your site, all of that can be found through Google Analytics in a really detailed way. If your websites are also built by some of these bigger web builders like Wix or GoDaddy and others, many of them also have analytic tools. They're not as advanced as Google Analytics, but it could be a good way to get started with understanding how your site's performing. So I'd encourage you to look at both options here. But on Google Analytics, there's a lot of stuff in this tool that's great, but I'm just going to call out 3 different areas, and that's audience, acquisition, and behavior. And there's these wonderful reports you can get around those areas. And audience, understand how many people are coming to your website and how frequently. the acquisition, this is really about where are they coming from? So are they finding you through paid search? Are they coming to you through Facebook? Those types of things. So you can really understand where you're excelling, where you might want to double down, and where perhaps you might have been investing and it's a bad investment. You don't want to spend money there because it's not working. And then finally, the behavior. Once they get to your website, what are they doing? You know, and they're looking at which pages, bouncing out and things like that. So it's a great way to understand how and where your site's performing well and where there's opportunities for improvement. So why is this important? Well, it's data-driven feedback and can help you improve your performance and ultimately your sales. And it's free. And the other thing is it's, you know, if you're using other Google tools, there's a real nice little linkage here as well, you know, into their AdWords and other things as well. So rating and reviews, you know, we talked about that before in terms of collecting ratings and reviews and building trust and influence. But rating reviews are also a really great resource in terms of understanding what are your customers thinking and saying about you, and what are you doing well, and where there might be performance gaps, areas to improve your customer experience, perhaps even navigation, and in some cases even new growth opportunities. And what I did to piece together this page, I basically, you know, thought about places that I had shopped recently. I spent about 10, maybe 15 minutes going to and looking at their reviews, and I found the following. And it's really great, rich stuff. You know, the first one is about, you know, clearly that there was a customer experience issue, and it was a warning. You know, and this particular business was kind of landlocked, but you know, they can use that to go forward and perhaps improve or communicate to their customers in advance when they're coming in and giving them a heads up of how to navigate their physical presence. The next one was really about a product, and a good product that people like, but a subtle way to make some improvements to that. And the third is an area, you know, about business expansion, or perhaps a partnership or a linkage, which is, you know, so I found these really quickly. It's dirt cheap. And the other thing I should mention here is this is also a really good resource to find keywords as well. You know, how are people talking about you or talking about your business? You can mine that as well. So rating and reviews, really a great way to find avenues for improvement. And as I mentioned, the language is useful in terms of keyword optimization. Okay, the next one is competitive benchmarking. And the reason we have this in here is your customers are benchmarking you. So you should be doing the same and thinking about that. And if you're not understanding how you stack up relative to your competition, and your customer does understand that, it's putting you at a bit of a disadvantage. So benchmarking can be viewed as, you know, a torturous and complex, you know, thing to do. But what I have here for you this evening is you know, I think a very simple and intuitive approach. And basically it starts with identifying what are the key business drivers around your business. And it's useful to think about it in terms of foundational areas. These are kind of the must-haves, you know, price, availability, things like that. And then what are the one or two things that are much more distinctive? These are the motivators. So again, going back to that target page at the very beginning, understand what are the triggers, what are the problems that are trying to be solved, and identifying these key business drivers. And then select your competitive set. Identify what you believe to be the gold standard in each of these key drivers. And then go through and just simply rate yourself and rate your competition. And rather than, you know, worrying about numbers, just do a red, yellow, green. And if you're red, you're losing. And if you're yellow, you're not gaining. And if you're green, you're winning. You have an advantage on a particular key business driver. And what this can do is just give you a really good snapshot of areas that you might have competitive disadvantages and gaps you might want to go after and close. But it also can point out areas where you might have a competitive advantage. And please understand that your competition probably knows that too, and they're going to be coming after you. So what is it you're going to do to make sure you hold that advantage? So competitive benchmarking is a really good way in terms of constantly fighting the battle and winning in the marketplace. So why is it important? As I mentioned, your customers are doing this kind of comparative shopping, so it's really, really useful as a minimum to understand how you stack up. And this can be a really great way to understand where you're winning, where you're losing, and gaps you want to close. Okay, then the last area is this notion of mobile readiness. And is your content mobile ready? And why is this important? Well, 60% of all online searches are now done mobile. In certain categories, it's even higher than that. You know, food and beverage, it's up in the 70s. And the thing I want to point out here visually on this page, what you're seeing on the left is an image from Amazon from a desktop. And then on the right is the same product, but it's on a mobile device. And it's very striking that it does not include bullet points. There's very few words, and the focus is on visual storytelling. So the point I'd like to make here, two of them. One is make sure your site is mobile ready. And if you're using most established providers today, they're going to make sure that you are. But then the other thing is to think about and understand that the industry is going more and more visual. And as you're thinking about your content, think more in terms of visual storytelling and icons and things like that as a way of how you present yourself, because that will be much more in line with the current technology trends and what your consumers are expecting when they shop you. So visual content is being really, really prioritized, and I encourage you to think more visually as you're optimizing your sites. All right, so that wraps up this section. And importantly, today's customer engagement can set up tomorrow's sales. And as I mentioned, this is an area, you know, unfortunately, a lot of businesses, they go and they get their transaction, get their sale, and they go try to get the next sale. But they don't think about, from the sale I just made, how do I set up my next sale with this individual? And capturing these metrics around your customer experience, providing and looking for these insights of how you can improve your sales. Those are the types of things you want to be doing because you have this great gold mine of people coming in, using your business, and you want to leverage that, not just for that individual transaction, but how you set up tomorrow's sales as well. All right, so just a few things before we get into Q&A. And I'd like to say on the right-hand side here, there's a whole bunch of great tools from Google that you can go to, you know, everything from the analytics and search and other things to really to understand more and to harness their tools to improve your competitiveness. Facebook and Yelp also have business offerings as well. And then on the left-hand side, we at SCORE are available to you. And if you're looking for a mentor, you've got the email address here. But if you simply have a question about the presentation, you've got Bob and myself, our email addresses, and you can just send us a note, and hopefully we can get back to you quickly with the answer you're looking for. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up and turn it back to Alan, and we can get into Q&A.
Hey, thanks, Larry and Bob. Tremendous amount of content, and we have some questions. And to our viewers, please feel free to submit questions during this period through the chat function. We welcome any and all questions. So let's get started. What are the top 3 priorities in starting my online business tune-up? Where should I get started?
Okay, let me jump back to the page with the 12 items. And Bob, maybe you and I can tag team on this. You probably gathered from the presentation that I'm a really big fan of target understanding. I think this is the waterfall, the top of the waterfall that everything flows from. So I would really strive to understand not just who they are, but what are they looking for? What's their shopping behavior? What's the problem they're looking to solve? And leveraging that, not just for who you speak to and try to bring into the door, but, you know, keyword optimization, site navigation, all of these things. It really really comes out of that. So target understanding, I think, is critically important. And then the other area is easy to buy navigation. So once somebody's in your site and understanding what is their mission, what are they trying to achieve, and making sure that that page flow is really working well, and you're helping them achieve their task in an efficient and informed way. That leads to a very good user experience, and good user experiences usually lead to strong sales. Bob, you want to offer up any?
Yeah, the one that I would add to the two that Larry mentioned would be Google Analytics. And I mentioned that just from the standpoint of understanding where your site is today. So it's a pretty easy install, and there's a lot of graphical charts and visual tools and things like that. You can kind of pretty easily see what's going on with your website, and it gives you a good baseline. It gives you a good benchmark. What's happening today? One of the questions is about bounce rate that Larry will address in a few minutes, but it tells you, how many people are coming to my site, where are they coming from, what's happening to them. You can drill down and say, okay, I just want to look at people coming from this particular referral site. How many are making it to the, the top of the sales funnel, and how many are ending up actually purchasing from you. It gives you a good baseline. So that's part one. Part two of this is that, a lot of my time was spent in kind of digital analytics for websites and stuff like that. And we did a lot of testing and learning. And one of the things that I came away with is that consumer behavior, especially in the digital environment, is just not intuitive at all. It's not. I may be able to guess what somebody may like on a website if they're exactly like me, but usually we don't have the luxury of having everyone on the site that's just like us, or knowing, everyone who's on the site. So that, back to that target understanding. So the nice thing about Google Analytics is, as you make changes, as you get into that continual improvement cycle, as you're making changes, go back to Google Analytics, see what it's doing. If you know that you got a bounce rate of X and it changes to Y, is that good or bad? And if if it turns out that it's not as good, then, kind of revert back to what the old one was. Or you can, if you know that there's a group of people that are good purchasers, they're coming from a certain referral site, if the rest of the site went bad, but this particular group was doing really well. That's the kind of stuff and insight that you get from Google Analytics. So understanding your customers, understanding that experience that they get on the site, but also having the data to back it up. So you're making data-driven decisions and not just gut feel stuff, because gut feel is really hard to be successful at in a web environment. It really is.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go to the next question. How can I increase my number of online reviews with Google, Yelp, and others, and do so in accordance with the guidance that these sites permit business owners?
Yeah. Well, you can't buy them. And to me, I think that would be a natural inclination, is give people a coupon to come back or something, and you give me a good review. But that's not allowed. And I think the best way to improve the number of reviews is to give a really good customer experience. And if you're delivering a strong customer experience, that tends to beget good reviews. But the thing you need to do is to ask for the review. And every time you have a touch point with a customer and you deliver a strong, positive customer experience, there's a lot of different ways you can subtly or not so subtly ask for that review. You know, if you have a physical bag and you're putting the product in it, you know, put a little card in there and ask for a review. You can do it on an invoice. If you have an email and you understand that person's, you know, where they are and all that, ask for that review. And so being proactive in that regard is really kind of the key thing, but you certainly want to start with giving a really positive experience. There are marketing companies that will help you for a fee to go increase your reviews, and they'll manage your site and all your reviews for you. So if you're a bigger or mid-sized business, that might be a consideration. But if you're a smaller business, a startup, other things along those lines, you want to just kind of be a bit aggressive in terms of giving a very good customer experience, and then making sure you ask for that review.
Sounds good. Question about how do AdWords and email marketing work together? Are these different approaches, or is there a way that they actually are connected?
They definitely could be connected, but they are separate tools, separate marketing resources, and I think on a high level, they're used for subtly different purposes. AdWords is a way to intersect a customer on their purchase path and to provide, you know, when they're doing a search, that notion of a contextual sale and making sure that you're popping up while they're on their purchase journey and hoping that you are then selected as the option that they're going to go for. Whereas email marketing does have a way of going out and finding customers for the first time, but it's also a really, really good platform in terms of categories where there's repeat purchases. And once you engage with somebody, they're your customer, you then want to understand what is their purchase cycle and send a reminder out, maybe even send an offer out so that the next time through you're considered, or perhaps you're even triggering the next round of purchases and all that. So on a marketing level, they're subtly different in terms of how and when to use them, but they're both very effective in terms of providing a one-to-one engagement with your customers.
Okay. All right, should I move on? Let's talk about competition. There's a few questions surrounding, one of them is, what does shopping the competition really mean, and why is it so important? So that's the first part of the question, and then they have a second part about how do you learn about the competition. So the first part, shopping the competition, what does it mean?
You want to take part one, Larry?
Sure. Well, shopping the competition, it's so important because it's a way to understand how you stack up, and depending on the business you're in, and again, I'd go back to that target understanding, and you're going to want to go shop your competition and understand what is it your customer is looking for, what's really important to them. And then when you then engage with your competition, or your sister-in-law does it for you, whomever does it, they are looking against those key business metrics or benefits and understanding what is your competition doing and how well are they doing that, And then ultimately you want to be able to bring that back and compare it to how are you doing. And so you then are getting a benchmark of understanding, you know, again, that red, yellow, green. Am I losing? Am I not gaining? Or am I winning? And it's so important in terms of this online world, because it's incredibly easy for your customers to go around and to shop other different sites and shop your competition. And they can get a wealth of understanding about you without transacting. So you want to know how you stack up on those points that matter most with that audience that matters most.
Okay, so part 2 is it's really tough to get information about competitors and their pricing. So do you have any particular insights or techniques on how to do this? Bob, you might want to take that.
Sure. I think one of the things you need to start with on here is that target understanding that Larry talked about. So if, figure out who your target is, figure out what their competitive set is. And if that's not you, if that target is somebody different than you, then, maybe find somebody that aunt, uncle, son, daughter, whatever, find somebody and have them, just like Larry said, just go and shop. I can't tell you how many transactions burned up on corporate credit cards of, just going through and buying things. The nice thing is that there's usually free shipping and easy returns. So you can actually go through all the way if you got free shipping, and if you can return it, you can actually get a pretty good feel for the consumer experience of, in a digital setting, and then if it's a bricks and mortar setting, you again send somebody who matches that target audience, have them go in and have them look for particular products and things like that and see what their experience is. So there's the way that you can shop, and you can get some information on what are the products, what are the prices, what's that experience like, what's their distribution like, are they fast or slow, and things like that. The second piece, so there's the actual shopping behavior, and you don't have to go all the way through. You can get a very good feel for the products and the prices and how they promote themselves by just getting it all the way up to the shopping cart and then abandoning it at that point. That plenty of people do that. But then the second part is use those online sources of information. BBB Online is very good. Yelp is good. Google has ratings and things like that. So just do a search, do a keyword search for for certain competitors that you got. Hopefully who they are, and you can just do things like company X, kind of ratings, or company X, what do customers say about them. You'll find all kinds of information that'll give you a good feel for what's going on with these customers. So when you put those two together based on your own domain knowledge and what is, what's the shopping experience? So what's the target? What's the experience like? What's the products that they have? How do they stack up with me? How do the prices stack up? And you can get, reviews and ratings from
Right.
online stuff, and you can put all that stuff together. So there's plenty of sources. You just have to kind of roll up your sleeves a little bit and play online
Right.
a little bit. You can find it.
That's great. Look, I think we're going to wrap up. You guys have covered a tremendous amount of ground. We appreciate the attention of our viewers, and of course the quality of the content and what it will mean to help folks in their business. Everybody, please stay connected, and you'll be prompted to access the evaluation form at the close of the event, and then I will be mailing you a PDF. Alan Blitz, it's SCORE, volunteer. You'll see that in the next couple of days, a PDF of Bob and Larry's presentation. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for all of your time, and to our viewers for taking time this evening to join us, and we look forward to staying in touch with everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Take care.